Going live. All right. And it says I am live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to BHT Studios. Let us begin. Oh, I'm in video mode. All right. Now, am I in video mode? Yes, I am. I'm still trying to reacquaint myself with the Leica SL system. All right. Ready to rock the Casbah? Let us begin. Hello everyone and welcome to BHT Studios and welcome to my first live show. It's been a while. It's been a couple of weeks, but I did say in my last live that I would be taking 2 weeks off because 2 weeks ago was my wedding anniversary, and then last weekend I just kind of wanted it off, and it was Mother's Day last weekend on last Sunday, so I kind of wanted to give people a break. And so thanks for joining. Let me know if audio is good, if everything is good, video latency. I see that there's 16 current viewers, so please compare CL with M lenses versus XPro camera with M lenses. Oh, that's actually a good one. Is that you, Dimitri? Who is D? So I do have the Leica CL, the original. I shouldn't say the original, but it is the CL version 1, but it's not the original APS-C T. Well, they call it the LMount now, right? Which is so for those of you that aren't acquainted to the Leica L-mount, originally it was actually called the T-mount, and then it was changed to the TL mount, and then now it's called the L mount, but it's all the same mount. The APS-C interchangeable lens cameras and the full frame interchangeable cameras, and then now the L mount alliance with Sigma and Panasonic. It's all the same. The mount is the same because right now I have the when it used to be called the T mount here. I'm not sure if you can see that there. It says Leica M to Adapter T. That's when it used to be called the T mount. It does work on the SL. It's the same mount. They just decided to rename it. And I always knew when the original Leica T came out, and at that time there was no Leica SL. If you look at the size of the mount, look how gargantuan the mount size is, and look how tiny the APS-C size sensor is. So I always knew that Leica would eventually go to a 35mm full frame. When the original Leica T came out, as soon as I saw it, I'm like, oh, there's gonna be a full frame version. And now you can see with the the Leica SL, see how that full frame sensor, the 35mm sensor, see how well it fits in here. So I always knew they would do that. And so for those of you that are interested, if you do have a T-mount adapter or anything that says T-mount or even TL mount, it will work on the L mount. It's the exact same mount. But that's actually a good point, because I do have a lot of this is the XPro 3, and I have the per gear lens on here, but I do have the adapter here. I don't have. You know what? That's the one thing I should have either purchased or asked Fujifilm to send me is the L mount. I'll just buy a cheaper one here. This is from a company called K&F Concept, and they make pretty good filters as well as adapters for the price. And so I will definitely get the L mount adapter for Fujifilm X, and then compare the using the same lens. So using something like my favorite Minolta 40mm f2, and put it on the Fujifilm and put it on the Leica CL, and sort of compare. I've never done a direct comparison between Leica APS-C and Fujifilm APS-C using the exact same lenses. I've done comparisons where I've used a Leica lens on a Leica body and a Fuji lens on a Fuji body, and it's true, you don't know, is it the lens? Is it the sensor? Is it the processing? Is it the software? What makes one, better or different or whatever? Where's that Leica magic happening? Is it happening in the optics end? Is it happening in the software? And I think it is a combination of all, including Fujifilm. Although I do feel that Fujifilm, a lot of it is software and sensor driven, because I use lenses like Per Gear. I do adapt my Minolta glass onto my Fujifilm, and it still has that magic. And especially when I use specific film profiles like Provia or Classic Chrome or Classic Neg, and it's a Minolta lens, it still looks fantastic. So I think with Fujifilm, at least, a lot of it is in the sensor and their processing software algorithms. With Leica, who knows? Let's see how much of it is in the glass itself. I've been a pretty kind of a lens nerd, I guess, when it comes to Leica, because I feel like if I'm paying the premium and and using a premium camera, it's good to use premium lenses. And so I'm not against using 7 Artisan, TT Artisan, Voigtlanders, those kind of lenses. A lot of my buddies have those, and they say, yeah, it's not the same as having a $5,000 35 Similux with Leica, and you're paying like $400 for like a Voigtlander, or $500 or $600, or even cheaper for TT 7 Artisans, those kind of I call them third party lenses. But it's not like the Leica is 10 times better because it's 10 times the price. And so that would be kind of a fun little experiment to do. So let me just look. Looks like there's lots of questions come up here. Audio is good. Thank you. For Ken Les from UK. Hopefully this is a good time for you guys in the UK. I try to get here earlier, but I do have a nice, like a Sunday lunch with Camera Girl. And my Camera Girl teaches piano at 1. And that's why I leave the house at 1, because I don't want to hear kids playing piano. So come here, and the quickest I can set up is 1:30. Now, if I was smart, I would set up the night before, but I don't want to leave all my gear here overnight. And so that's why I rush here, set everything up, lay everything down. Oh, this is the one thing I was going to do. And this is, hopefully one day my dream will come true, and I will have a shoe sponsor. And every video when I do live, I'll be like, and this video is sponsored by the Adidas Superstar. And this is a premium version. As you can tell, it has the yellowed midsole. And look inside, it actually has a cork insole. Uses premium leather and just, what else can I say? But this isn't sponsored by Adidas. I would love for them to. But I thought I would start this again before I would start the video with a shoe. And so this is my favorite. I'm even wearing my Superstar mules. This is actually designed to kind of wear them as slippers, and this is my main sort of slipper in my studio. So I'm a huge fan of the Superstar. If you're not, I apologize. I have some sneaker buddies that hate the Superstar, but oh wow, they're all Nike heads. And Ali, good evening from Windsor. Hello, Ali, and thanks for the little nudge on Twitter about me coming on live. I was going to come on live, and my wife got mad saying, why didn't you reply back to him? And I said, well, because I can't set an exact time, and I made the thumbnail this morning when the first thing I woke up after I did my morning things. And so thanks for joining. And from Holland, Menno Stormink, thanks for joining from Holland. And what time is it in Holland? And what time is it in UK? Are you guys in the same? You guys are similar, but Holland is a little bit... you guys are a little bit more east, so maybe you guys, your time zones are a little bit different. XPro lover, me or you? I am an XPro lover. Sounds good. Thank you. MP coming in from London, UK. Thanks for joining. I had a feeling I'd have a lot of UK followers coming on at this time, and that's kind of why I picked this time. I wish someone had said, Take, pick 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. as a time where everyone from North America, UK, Germany, Europe, as well as in Asia can join. But Taki don't get up till usually... I'm a little bit embarrassed to tell you this because I'm no longer 4 years old, but I typically wake up at around 9:30. I go to bed around midnight, but Taki sleeps a lot. I get up at 9:30, and so that means I got to get up at maybe 7:30 or 8 to get to my studio by 9. So, not that I would never do it, but for now, I hopefully you guys are okay with this time. I don't think I'm going to get too many people from from Hong Kong or Japan at this time. It's a little late, I guess, or a little early. It's a little early for them. It's probably 4:30, 5:30 in the morning. And Kavon, when did you get the SL2? Just on loan from my local rep. I've always mentioned this to you guys that I'm privileged to have a local Leica rep. I do get stuff sent directly from Leica, but I do have a local rep, and whenever he gets something new, he usually just texts me or phones me, says, "Hey Taka, I've got this camera in." But sometimes I'm just swamped with lots of other reviews, and I know when he loans it to me, he usually gives me 2 weeks to test something, and if I look at my schedule and my schedule's just way too packed, then I feel bad borrowing it from him. So I usually say no. I did start a Leica SL2 first impressions like a year and a half ago, and I never finished it. So I thought it would be a good time to finish it. And he also let me borrow his CL with the 18-2.8, which is actually really cool because it is a pancake. And I think comparing this setup with probably, I don't have it, but like an XE4 with the 18 f2 or the 27 f2.8, although the focal lengths are different, the idea of having a APS-C compact camera, because you know the EVF on the CL is really nice. It's definitely better than Fujifilm's. It's the same 2.39 million pixel EVFs, like a similar one that's on the XS10 and the XE4 and the XT30, but the magnification on this is similar to that on a XT4X, which is like 0.74 on the CL. So beautiful EVF, easy to use. Oh, excuse me. Really easy to use the EVF, even with glasses on the CL, which you can't say the same with the XE4, XT30, and the XS10, and even to a certain degree the X100 series. So it's a really cool camera. So I have both of those, and they also loaned me the 16 to 35, and this isn't a 2.8. I mean, the size of it, you'd assume it's a 2.8, but it actually is a f 3.5 to 4.5. But this, what I found in general with the Leica SL glass, including their 24 to 90, which is a huge honking lens. On any other mount, like if it's a Sony, you'd assume it was a 70 to 200 f2.8 or 24 to 70 f2.8, but it's a 24 to 90 f4 to 6.3 or something. It's not very fast, but I did find with the SL glass that they oversize the amount of glass that's necessary, giving you a larger sweet spot. And I have a feeling that this lens, although it's meant for 35, might even work on medium format because it's so chunky. But optically, I've tested this, and I've tested the 24 to 90, and I tested the 50 Noct, I think, the SL mount, and they're all just like world-class optics. But you know, you pay for it in size and weight. So let me just try to catch up here. What bag would you recommend to use with the larger SL body? It depends, Pete, on how much gear you want to carry, and if you want to do like a shoulder carry, or if you want to use a backpack. I think let me think about it. Let me just throw it in the back of my head. Let me think about it, because I don't typically, like, even I don't have it. It's at home, but even the Chrome, the Nico Camera Sling 2.0, even though it's a small bag, it's a big boxy bag, and it gives a lot of breathing room for cameras like this. So if you do have a chunky lens like this on here, that it can still kind of fit in, but you can't put much more in it. So it depends if you want to carry this camera around your neck, right? And then you just have a little small bag next to you, or if you want to keep it secure in a backpack style or a sling style and you want quick access. It really depends on how you want to carry it. But that's actually a good question, because now that I have the SL, what I've been doing thus far is using this bag, right? This Bevis gear, which you guys saw me do a YouTube video. Currently, I have both straps in the front, because I carry it like this, and this is the really unique back button entry into this bag. So I've been using this for now, but it's not quick access for me because I don't like using this side zip that much. I don't find it that convenient for me. Like my arms can't reach that far back like this. So I use this to go back and forth from my studio, and then when I'm out shooting, I leave this in the passenger side seat, and then I crack this open. And this is kind of how I shot with my with this bag. Where is it? This bag here, the BP 350 from LowPro. I like this bag because same thing. I leave it next to the passenger side. I crack her open, and I leave. I have it open so I can access whatever gear. So this has been my heavy duty camera centric. I'm not trying to look cool, although I do think this bag looks pretty cool. I'm just out to shoot, right? And so I would always bring this with me to Hong Kong. This went into the plane. I carry all my main gear in here. I did find it a little bit tight, but I didn't like the PP 450. It's a little bit too big. And so I'm pretty sure that this 21 liter bag will replace the BP 350 as my, carry it on the plane when I'm out shooting seriously. And I have multiple review gears. I would put it all in here when I travel. And the fact that I can sling this forward and then to my front and open the gear, if I don't have to put it on the ground, I would use a bag like this. But good question. Let me think about it. UK is just past 2100 hours. That is what is that? Is that 730? 2100. 23 is 11. 22 is 10. 21 is 9:30. All right. That's not a bad time. That's a good time for those in the UK. And 6:30 a.m. Hey Jennifer Granger, thanks for joining. And hopefully you're an early riser. My wife, Camera Girl, she gets up at 6:30. I think she went for a run this morning. I would know because I woke up at 9:30. Technically, I got up at 9:22. And for those of you that know me, I don't sleep with any electronics on my side of the room. No, I don't have my cell phone. All that stuff is in my desk, on top of my desk. So I just have a little digital alarm clock, and I don't set the alarm. I just wake up when I wake up. And so I think Camera Girl went for a run this morning at 6:30. So hopefully 6:30 is a good time for you. And Menmo coming from Holland, 22. So it's a 10:40. So that's not too bad for you guys, eh? Yes, Nick Johnson saying the CL is so good. It is very good if you can afford it, right? If you can afford something like the Leica CL, the major negative I would say with the CL is negative lenses, which is not a huge deal if you get the adapter, the M to it's called the L mount now, the M to L mount. Although what I have here is the M to T mount adapter. You can use all your Leica glass or all your M mount glass, which a lot of people do have. Although you have to use manual focus. Focus peaking isn't that great on Leicas. I remember that as soon as I got the Leica SL2, I thought oh yeah, I forgot how not so great the focus peaking is on it. That's something in software. Hopefully Leica can update that. I think it's really important to have a solid focus peaking when people are adapting lenses. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's not that. Right now I'm using a monitor, an Andy Cine 4K monitor here, and I turn on the camera, the built-in focus peak, and it's pretty darn good. I could see the red lines around the edge of my glasses and my hat, and so it helps me to know that I'm in focus. Although I am in autofocus mode here, I always know about where the focus is on here. And for those of you that are wondering, I am using the Fujifilm X-T4 with the 10-24 f4 lens for this video, and I use it mostly, the X-T4, for most of my videos. The video quality is good. The autofocus is what's really important to me, and face detect, because it stays on me, and it's a great talking head. I did a sort of a private Zoom call last night, Zoom gathering amongst friends, and I did use the Leica SL2 with the 40, and everyone's just like, "Oh wow, Take, you're glowing." They notice, and I usually use the Fujifilm X-T4 and the 16-80 or the 23 f2, and I did use the 18-1.4. And in general, that looks better than what most people use, which is the built-in webcam in their cameras. But you know, after a while, people get used to the quality of my Zoom calls, and they don't compliment me all the time. But when I use the SL2 with the 40, people immediately noticed. They said, "Oh wow, Taki, you're glowing. What camera?" And these aren't camera nerds, and they're like, "Did you change your camera? Like, wow, your images look different." I'm like, "Oh, you guys can tell." And it was the 40, but I had it at f2.8 even. I didn't even have it stopped down. At f2, you can see the vignetting, which is common with this lens and a lot of M-mount lenses. So I stopped down to f2.8, and it was in manual focus, but I had the focus peaking on my monitor, so I knew when I was in focus or out of focus. And non-camera nerds noticed right away that, "Oh, there's something's happening with your video. What did you do different?" It's like, "Oh, you guys could tell the difference." So there is some kind of a magic, although you do pay for it with the Leicas. I bought a new car instead of a Leica. Yeah, it is one of those things, right? And for those of you that are familiar with, you know, other systems when it comes to like cars and watches, this is a Tissot. This is kind of a lower end Swiss watch that is well known. There are tons of smaller boutique Swiss watch brands out there, but this is kind of like a well known lower end one. So this is maybe a 400 or 500 US Swiss watch, and I could have got a Rolex instead and spent $5,000, which is 10 times the price. But no one argues in the watch world like, "Oh, I bought a Tissot instead of a Rolex because, the Tissot is just as good as the Rolex." And it's true, it is just as good. There are a few things about the Rolex that's nicer, but if you're just looking at the specs and just the basic output, there isn't a huge difference between a Tissot and a Rolex. But that's not why you pick a Rolex. And same with Leica. There are some things about the Leica. Clearly, they do have optics technology. They don't make their own sensors, like Fujifilm doesn't make their own sensors. But there's something magical about the Leica system, their glass, their engineering, their concept of form follows function. Although I do find that form is probably equal to function for Leica a lot of times. But the SL2 is a really functional camera. I do like the ergonomics even of the original SL. In fact, I do like the original SLs, the 4 programmable buttons that are unmarked. I actually like that better than this sort of system here, especially because this system forces you to use your left hand to press these buttons here. If they were over here, you can still reach them with your thumb. So it still kind of forces a two-hand. And I'm used to the XPro 3 even, where a lot of us have been asking Fuji, like, move all your control features to the left so that you don't need to use your other hand if you don't have to most of the time. And so I can quickly find my play button and stuff like that. And so I felt that these buttons should be over on this side, but I digress. If you want a properly functioning, capable camera, you don't need to buy a Leica. Just like you don't need to buy a Rolex, you don't need to buy a Rolls Royce or even a Mercedes. You don't need to buy those things. But if you want something premium, if you want something, it's a tool that is both for a craftsperson and an artist. And if you think about craftspeople and artists, a lot of their decisions of the use of their tools aren't necessarily technical, right? Like, I don't know how nerdy Picasso was with the paintbrushes that he used. I'm sure there are artists that are super picky, but there's some that don't. And if you ask some artists, "Hey, why did you pick that brush?" they'll say, "I like the color, like the handle is red." And even if you look at some professional athletes, they also have a choice of a plethora of, I use baseball or hockey, like a baseball bat or a glove or a hockey stick, and you ask them, like, why do you use this brand over the other brand? Often it's not a technical decision. They'll say, "Oh, it's my first stick," or my first bat. I grew up with it. My grandpa gave me his old bat, and that's the only brand I've ever used. That kind of thing, right? So those aren't technical reasons why these athletes or artists pick certain tools. So if you can afford a Leica, I don't begrudge anyone who can afford it. Go for it. But don't think you're going to automatically become a better photographer because you spent more. But on the same side, I don't like when people make fun of Leicas because they're saying, oh, my Sony can do the same thing at half the price. You know, a Lexus can probably outperform a lot of Mercedes-Benzes and Rolls-Royces, and they're, you know, often half the price, or when it comes to Rolls-Royce or Bentley, it's a tenth the price, but that's not why you buy a Bentley or a Rolls-Royce, right? And I don't think that's why people specifically, if you got the $7,000 to buy an SL2, go for it. I think that's great. I think this is a beautiful camera, and I too wish I could afford it. I have the Leica M7. I got a super cool deal for it. If I didn't get the M7, I probably would have bought an M4 without the meter on it, or an M2 maybe, because I want the, I want the 0.72 magnification because I shoot 28 and I want to see the 28 frame lines, but same thing. I know I could have easily got a Bessa R series, or I have a Minolta CLE. I can shoot with that, but you know, there's a few things technically why I like the M7, but as well, it's kind of a premium thing, like buying a Rolex watch, and I just enjoy using it. And so I never begrudge anyone that spends a little bit extra to get exactly what they want, as long as they're not delusional about them having this higher end gear that's somehow going to make them photograph better, or as a painter to paint better, or as an athlete to be able to bat better. A lot of it is psychological, right? Psychologically, if you think it's going to make you, well, not make you better. If psychologically it makes you feel better that you have these things, just like how clothing can change the way you think about things, then go for it. You know, spend the extra money if it makes you feel better that you have a Leica or some other brand. But I don't focus too much on gear. I always, if you guys have seen me on live, I'm usually holding my Minolta, right? Which this body is probably not even $100 body. Like, you don't see me every week on YouTube live with my Leica M7. In fact, I don't take this out that often. When it comes to these kind of talking head sort of videos, you usually just use my Minoltas because I love this camera. So, $100 camera, $4,000, $3,000 body camera, I don't really care. It comes down to what I need for what I'm shooting, and that's what I go with. So that's a huge conversation. Let me try to catch up here. Very underrated, the CL. Yeah, and I think there is a CL2 coming out, and a lot of people have been talking about it. I hope the CL will have an articulating screen. We'll see. Even the Leica Q, I thought would have, like the Q2 would have an articulating screen. They didn't put it on there. I think, like Fujifilm, Leica is hesitant on putting articulating screens. It just seems kind of not their thing, but a CL or an SL is not an M body, right? It's kind of catered to a more modern photographer. It uses an EVF, not a traditional rangefinder system that people kind of equate Leica to. So I don't think it would be blasphemous or anti-form follows function. In fact, I think it's on point of form following function by putting a articulating screen on an SL or a CL. So CL2 with an articulating screen, with, if they can have on-sensor phase detect as well as contrast detect, would be great. I don't think they can fit IBIS on here, but even having lenses with OIS would be great for the CL system. But yeah, they don't have a lot of native lenses for the CL, which is a shame. Donald Klein, yeah, I was gonna say Billingham too. Billingham's nice. It's just an attention magnet, but I guess it's on point, I guess. If you have a $7,000 camera body with a $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 lens, to have a $800 camera bag, I guess, if you can afford it. I personally just don't like the the aesthetics. I guess when I first got into photography and I was looking at sort of shoulder bags, I saw the Billinghams and I saw the Domkeys, and my heart went to the Domkey. That was just kind of more my style. Remember, I was 21 and I saw a Billingham, and what I saw was someone wearing a Peaky Blinders hat and a smoking pipe, and it just felt very like old to me as a 21-year-old photographer. I looked at Filson and Domkey and I'm like, these bags look sweet, and so I went Domkey, and I'm kind of that style. I don't like bags that are overly embellished and overly fancy looking, but that's just me. And when I see a Billingham, I think they're beautiful, just like I think Rolls Royce and Bentleys are beautiful cars as a car guy, but I would, even if I had the money to buy one, I probably wouldn't unless it was an old vintage one from like the 60s or 70s, just because it's not really my style. It just doesn't really fit my look. But Billingham is a good brand, and they're solidly built and they have good warranties. I just personally don't have any personal experience using one because I've never owned one, so I couldn't really say one way or the other. The Bruno, the 24 to 90 is 2.8 to f4. Are you sure 2.8 to f4? Maybe you're right. I thought it was slower. I thought it was a slower lens, but you could be right. It's been a while since I tested that lens. It was a monster lens. I could not shoot with it on the street because it was just a pain to carry around. But yeah, maybe SL 24 to 90. Not that I don't believe you. I just kind of want to see it with my own eyes here. You are right. 2.4 to f4. Thank you for correcting me. I love it when people correct me. So for its size and knowing how Leica builds their cameras, I think f2.8 to f4 is reasonable for Leica to have made, for its size and weight, for Leica and for the SL system, that it's reasonable. It's reasonable to have, especially knowing when the transition is. Like I can't remember if I did a test where if I went to the 50 mil mark with that lens to see if it was already at f4, or if it was at f3.5. It would be nice if at least 40 mil, if not 50 mil, that lens can still maintain f2.8 up to at least 40 mil, at least 40. So you kind of have that sort of waist up portrait, so you can get okay shallow depth of field. It would be nice, so you wouldn't be forced to carry a 50 cron, or in my case, I would bring my 40 cron or 40 f2 Minolta. Technically, it's not a cron because it's not made by Leica, but it would be nice. If not, then if I had a 24 to 90 and it didn't go to 40 at f2.8, then I would be forced to bring my 40 f2, and if you have a 50 f2 or something, to bring something like that you can get shallow depth of field or faster shutter speeds with this lens when you're out and about and shooting. But thanks for that correction, Bruno. I appreciate that. Jennifer, sleep as much as you can. Been up since 4:30. Oh, wowzers. You are an early riser, Jennifer. You can share with us why you get up at 4:30 if you would like to, but that's pretty early. I admire people who don't need to sleep as much. I think I've mentioned this many times. In high school, I had a paper route, and I had to be done by 6 a.m. So I'd get up at 5 a.m. every morning all through high school. And as high schoolers, you always want to sleep in, right? Because you're always up too late. And I hated it, but I hated not having money more than hating to have to get up. So I got up at 5 every morning, did my paper out, got home, and then slept for another 2 hours, and then went to school. And I hated getting up early. I just don't like it. I like the idea of it. I wish I can sleep for like 6 hours and feel refreshed. I just don't. If I don't get at least 8, I don't feel well. Cav on, Leicas are much cooler than a car. Yeah, I mean, I collected Hot Wheels for the longest time because I'm like, well, I don't think I've I'm going to be the type of person that can find a job that pays me so well that I can afford a fleet of vehicles. That would just stress me, even if I had the money. You see, like the Jerry Seinfelds and the Jay Leno's, how they have these car collections. You need to hire someone to basically maintain them for you. And even if I had the hundreds of millions of dollars that I have disposable income to buy a garage and have employees just to maintain it, just knowing I have that all would stress me out. I'd rather just have a closet full of nice cameras, because they're kind of close to me, right? And so yeah, I like my Hot Wheels cars. Can't drive a Leica to work. Yeah, you could take a bus to work or a bike to work, depending on the city you live in. If you live in Texas, Austin, Texas, and there's all highways, maybe you shouldn't bike ride to work or even scooter to work. It doesn't seem safe. But if you live in New York or Tokyo or London or Hong Kong or even Vancouver, you have a pretty decent transit system. Toronto has a pretty decent transit system. I know a lot of American cities don't. I think LA is not so good. I was in San Diego and I was quite surprised at how bad the transit system was. I guess it's just not a priority in a lot of U.S. cities. I don't know what that sound was. To have a really good public transit system. It seems like someone had said this to me. They said, public transit's for poor people. And that's kind of a shame that there are cities that think that way, or even countries that think that way. There's one statement that said, true wealth of a society is that even the rich take public transit. And I agree with that. You know, you go to like Tokyo, my dad is quite wealthy. He takes public transit. You go to New York, you see movie stars and stuff taking public transit. And I think it does sort of showcase the wealth of a society that would put money into the infrastructure of public transit so that rich or poor, it kind of equalizes everyone. Where if you go to a really poor country, you could tell like the rich drive really nice cars and the poor are screwed, right? And the rich don't want to put money into public transit because it doesn't enrich them. It doesn't help them personally. It only helps people that are less fortunate than them. And so often, not always, but often countries like that will have very poor public transit. I love public transit. I think it's great. And when I travel, I really appreciate cities that have really well. And that's why I want to go to London. I think I'm sort of changing subject a little bit. Because the vaccine rollout is happening very quickly, and transmission, if you ever see the US transmission rates are quite low. Canada's sort of plateauing, but not dropping like the US. They're talking about opening up the border between Canada and US. So for vacation with Camera Girl, I think maybe San Diego might be my first choice. And for work, I probably would go to New York first over anywhere else. And then internationally, I think I would consider going to the UK. So those of you that are in the UK, look forward to seeing me. And I've already contacted two of my colleagues there in the UK, and we're going to do some pretty sweet things in the UK. So stay tuned. If Camera Girl comes with me, it'll be a mixture of work and pleasure. And if that's the case, I'm going to have to reduce the amount of things I'm going to do in the UK. But if not, and it's just me for work, I love hustling when I'm working and traveling. That we'll do some cool things in the UK. All right, so stay tuned for that. Menno, M2. I like the M2. The one thing I hate about the M2, the one thing, is the counter not resetting when you take the film out. The counter not resetting. That's the pain. And they did fix it with the M4, but the M3 always had a resetting counter, which kind of made sense, right? So that's the only thing that it's painful about the M2. Leica, so it uses film, right? John Crow. I'm not sure if you're just kind of kidding or not, but these two do not take film. They're digital cameras. I think you were just kidding, John. John? Is it John? John, yeah. And this M7, yes, it takes film. Is there film in here, though? No, there's no film in here right now. I need to go shoot some films soon. I've been shooting a lot of instant film with Camera Girl, and I've been shooting a lot of my point and shoots, but not like I'd say proper cameras where I'm shooting for artistic expression, if I can call it that, other than just sort of documenting. I like documenting with point and shoots and with my Instax cameras, and I love using my film SLRs and my rangefinders as a form of artistic expression. Do you personally use the new 18 f1.4? I sent it back. I don't have a copy, and even if I pre-ordered one, which I have not yet, I would have to wait 2 months for it. And so, no. After a handful of us got the lens, immediately tons of people wanted to borrow it. So even if I wanted it on loan from Fujifilm, it'd probably take me 2 months to get it, or I just pre-order now, and I'll get my copy in 2 months. So we'll see. I have a few kind of big expenses coming up, and so just sort of hesitating on, like, the new Max just came. I just ordered a new iPad Pro, and I'll do a video on that when it comes in. It's showing up, I think, and it said between May 28th and June 2nd. So once the iPad Pro comes in, then I have to buy a new monitor, because the monitor that you often see me have in my YouTube videos, it's not even a monitor, it's an old TV. I mean, it has HDMI in, so I can plug in my computer, but the colors are off and the resolution's only 1086. It's not even 1080, 1086, 1068. So it's not even proper HD. 1080, 1068? Maybe it's 1080. I don't know, but it's not a proper monitor, so I need to buy a new monitor, and I need to buy other things. And I know there's other things coming down the Fujifilm pipeline. There's some things that I'm aware of, and there's some things that I'm not aware of, but these will take a significant amount of financial backing for me to purchase these items. And so new computers, new camera gear, and possible upcoming trips, both pleasure with Camera Girl and work to UK, all those things cost money, right? So I'm talking the stuff that I just kind of mentioned, we're talking like 10 grand worth of expenses. So it's a lot of money. So I would love an 18-1.4, but currently I don't need that in my workflow. Like, I have quite a few 18 lenses or 28mm equivalent lenses. I have my Ricoh GR1, the digital Ricoh GR4, GR3 has a 28 equivalent. I have the X100 with the adapter that has a 28 equivalent, the X70, the 28 equivalent, Minolta MD mount 28, Minolta autofocus 28. I have like 7 or 8 cameras with the 28mm field of view, so I don't really need the 28-1.4, although it would be nice to have it within my Fujifilm ecosystem, but it's not a priority for me. So I may eventually buy it, but there's a couple other things. You guys will understand in a few months or so when things are coming out from Fujifilm and go like, oh, that's what Tak is saving up for. So I'll just leave it at that. OC2 Fish 07, very difficult name to say. Yeah, I'm planning at least one sort of meet and greet, and then one photo walk. Once everything's confirmed, I mean, nothing's confirmed, right? I can't even technically fly to the UK right now unless I quarantine myself for 2 weeks. I can 100% call it work, because I can get my colleagues in the UK to send me the forms to say, hey, we've hired this guy to do a thing in UK. He's here for work. So I can legitimately go to the US for work and get any of my colleagues in the US to vouch for me, that's saying, hey, he's coming down here for work. But I haven't even gone that far yet. But once we do, we'll do some cool stuff in the UK. Kretstov Gorny saying you have the 23 f2 and considering to upgrade the XT10 and you want a rangefinder. You mean rangefinder style, right? Because the XE4 isn't a proper rangefinder. It's a rangefinder styled camera. And in fact, even Fujifilm now in their literature calls it an offset viewfinder. They no longer use the term rangefinder styled camera. They just say offset viewfinder. Buy an XE4 or should I consider an X100V. If you want a proper rangefinder, although X100V itself is not a proper rangefinder, meaning, you know what, I shouldn't even say that. I would say it's a modern digital rangefinder because you do get the optical viewfinder. No, you're not focusing with a offset, focus with the patch that kind of comes together, but you can do it digitally with a miniature EVF. If you want a true rangefinder experience in a digital format and don't want to spend an arm and a leg, meaning buying a Leica M digital rangefinder, then an X100 or an older XPro, like buying an XPro 2, would be a good consideration. Also, you like to shoot 50, equivalent probably you mean, right? So 35. A 35 on a XPro 2 looks great. On XPro 3, the viewfinder doesn't zoom, so it's not as good. So you lose the interchangeability when you buy an X100V, although I'm sure you would enjoy using it. You wouldn't be disappointed with an X100V as long as you're willing to accept the limits of having that camera with that it's a 23 lens on there, so you get a 35mm equivalent. You can get the adapter to get a 50mm equivalent, but I find that adapter way too big and clunky. I wish they remake that TCL-X100, make a Mark III version, have it f2.4 or f2.8, make it half the size, make it half the weight. I'm sure people would be okay with it. Donald, I'm fully vaccinated, so I'm ready to go. Canada is also on the list. Yeah, I've got my first shot already, and probably my second shot will be sometime in August, probably. July or August, and then I should be okay for the fall. So that's why I'm sort of already planning the fall. Camera Girl left her 3 weeks vacation in October. She's left it open. And I told her, and she hasn't flown anywhere since 2017. So it's been 4 years for her to be on a plane. And so she's kind of dying to travel. And for me, you guys know, like I travel 4, 5, 6 times a year by plane. So 2020 was a tough year, like just traveling once. But I'm lucky, right? I went to Hong Kong in January. COVID started in China, slowly started finding its way into Hong Kong as I was leaving Hong Kong. So I came back pretty freaked out. And as you know, I mentioned, I self-quarantined, voluntarily quarantined myself, even though I didn't have to. A lot of my friends thought I was insane because like, what are you quarantining yourself? And I'm like, you guys don't know what's coming. And 2 months later, it happened, right? It just was insane here. But I was lucky to travel in January and come back to Vancouver and not have any repercussions of traveling globally. And sorry, I'm just looking for my water. I'm losing my voice. I'll be right back. But 2020 was a hard year. So 2021, I think I'm probably going to travel at least twice. Once with Camera Girl and then once with for work. So either going to be once to the US and once to the UK or twice to the US. We'll see. If I can pull off New York and UK at the same time, I don't think I should do that. I think I'll be too exhausted. I haven't been to New York since 2003, and I've never been to the UK. So I think I should spend more time in those one places instead of trying to split the time. Because I promise Camera Girl to never be away for longer than 3 weeks on any of my work trips unless necessary. Unless 100% necessary. So we'll see what happens. Jennifer, any tips on taking photos wearing glasses? I have a film camera and the adapter is not available. Yeah, I guess it comes down to, Jennifer, on the viewfinder. I know with Leicas have screw-on little diopters you can use, and depending on the cameras like the Nikon F and the Canon F series had changeable focusing screens, changeable pentaprisms, and the Nikon had the f3 HP, which means the high eye point. It was meant for people that wore glasses that sort of shrunk the size of the viewfinder, so it made it easier for you to see the full frame. So that's a camera you can think of. Anybody else in the comment section, if you know of any other film cameras that you can help Jennifer that has smaller viewfinders, so it makes it easier for glass viewers to be able to see the full frame. Because I know even for me, when I wear glasses with my Leica, because I shoot with a 28, I can't see the edges of the frame lines with the 0.72 frame line. It's way too far to the edge, so I find it difficult to shoot with glasses. Hence, I don't wear my glasses when I shoot with this camera here. When I do shoot with glasses, I make sure that the camera, like an SL, has a really nice large magnification, but also a very large eye cup opening here, so I can see through here really nicely. And same with the XT series with Fujifilm XT1, XT2, XT3, XT4. Very easy to see with glasses. But with film cameras, another thing you can consider is, if you want to, using a waist level finder, like the Nikon F3 and the Canon F1 also has waist finder viewfinders, or shooting with a Hasselblad or a Rolly twin lens reflex, so you're looking down and shooting. And they do have a magnifier inside, so if you do need to do critical focusing, you use that to critical focus and then go back to the viewfinder to see. Or if you shoot with a rangefinder, you can add a external viewfinder just for framing, right? So it's not for focusing. So you look in, see, even with the 28 with my Leica, I can't see the frame lines, but I can at least see the middle focusing patch, which is what's going to help me focus. And then if I had a 28mm external viewfinder, which I do have, I put that on here and I use that for framing. So focus here and then use this for framing. And you could even do that on an SLR, is to buy an external viewfinder to help you at least frame your image. And especially if you're shooting things that are further out. So sure, if you're shooting up close, you get parallax error, right? Between what you're physically supposed to be getting on your film versus what your viewfinder is seeing. But if you're shooting stuff out further than, let's say, about 20 feet, the parallax error is millimeters, right? It's very little error when you're shooting further out. So that's something else that perhaps you can consider. And if there's any other tips you guys have, because I know there's a lot of experienced photographers that join me here on my live stream, which I really appreciate. Help Jennifer there to give her some tips on how to shoot with your film cameras with glasses. I know what you mean. Like, what she means is it's kind of a pain to use glasses, so it's nice to be able to take it off and not have to. And also, Jennifer, what is your glasses prescription? Like, what is your dioptrics? Is it like minus, like if it's -10, you're probably never going to find a camera that has a built-in diopter that's going to correct it enough that you can shoot without glasses. But if it's like a -2 or a -3, or I'm a -4, a lot of the cameras, there is enough. Let me even check my Fuji, my Fujifilm here. So here's this. Yeah, see, I'm -4, and even on my Fuji digital with -4, if I have this set up correctly, I don't need the diopter here. I can use this without glasses, and then when I'm like this, I can see, but things are blurry. Then I put my glasses on. So you need a camera with a diopter that's within the range of your eye, like what the correction is on your glasses. If you're nearsighted, if you're farsighted, if you can go either way, you'd have to check to see what the diopter correction is on that camera. Kavon, you just barely escaped it. Yeah, talking about leaving Hong Kong. Yeah, like, it was pretty freaky when I left. I left Hong Kong February the 3rd, February the 2nd. February 2nd or February 3rd is when I left Hong Kong. And I think at that time, Hong Kong had 8 cases. And a lot of people from China were fleeing China through Hong Kong. So I was more freaked out about being at the airport than I was about Hong Kong itself. Hong Kong is safe, right? Even now, the numbers are reasonably low per capita compared to even Canada. But definitely, it was kind of a scary moment as I was leaving Hong Kong, and I didn't want to get anybody else sick in my family, right? So I stayed. I have actually a little tiny bed set up in the other. This is Studio A. I have Studio B where I shoot my other videos, and then I have Studio C. I have a bed there. I slept here for 2 weeks. Any plans to test the GFX 100S? I got the thumbs up that I think I'm getting the one that, what's his name? Patrick Tommaso, is that his name? Patrick Tommaso. I think he has one now. I think I'm getting his copy. He got it before I did. Whatever, Fujifilm could do what they want. But they told me mid May I probably would get my copy. So I'm assuming tomorrow I'll get a message from Fujifilm and them telling me when I'll be getting it. So I'll be getting it soon. And I still have the GFX 50S too, so. Wait, did you say GR4? Hey Dan, GRD4, which is the last APS-C, the last non-APS-C Ricoh Digital GR, and I love the GRD4. I've had a few buddies of mine try to buy this off me. And the funny thing is, if you look on eBay, I think, the GRD4 is selling for more than the GR, the APS-C, because I think these are rarer. Because it was so expensive for what it was. Not many people bought this, but this is a classic. Some will say that the GRD3 is more of a classic, but I like this one because this actually has IBIS. It actually has sensor shift on here, which is insane, right? But look it up. GRD4 sensor shift. And this came out in 2009? 2010? Around there. That's when this one came out. Adam Bucci. XPro 3 is getting long in the tooth. Well, it came out in 2019. So this fall, it'll be 2 years. So it's not too bad. It's just people didn't like the screen, right? Which I actually love. I was like most of you. I thought it was weird. I'm like, that's really weird. But I'm going to be open-minded. I know these things, you can't just look at a picture and say, oh, I know 100% this won't work for me. You got to use it, right? Just like anything, until you get it in hand, it's really hard to guess if you will like something or not. And sometimes it's the weirdest little thing. That's why you try on clothes, right? It might look good in a photo, but you're like, until I try it on, I don't really know if this will work for me. And the camera's the same. I didn't really know if this will work for me or not. And I ended up loving it. I see why most people don't like it, but I think it's because most people haven't tried it. I really like it, but it's not my primary camera, right? And if it was my primary camera, this would be a pain to shoot certain things. On a tripod, the screen does not, it stops here on a tripod, right? It stops like this, so it's hard to see. So on a tripod, I have it up here, I can't see it, right? Because this gets in the way. So if I was a tripod shooter, I would hate the XPro 3, but you know, I have the luxury of having more than one Fujifilm body, so for me, I love it. Jonas Rask loves his XPro 3, but he's like me. He has tons of other cameras, and he compartmentalizes how he uses certain cameras for certain things. For me, I use my XPro 3 as a day-off camera with my wife. I use it to put either adapters or these manual focus prime lenses. It's my fun play camera. I use my favorite Kura camera film photo Japanese silk strap on here. It's just a lot of fun. But for someone who uses that one camera to do everything, I can see why it would be a pain. So, Michael Chan, what vaccine did you get? Moderna? Let me see here. Donald Klein, you will love the UK. I lived there twice. One in the military and one as an expat. Yeah, I would. I always tell people as a Canadian, the UK is kind of like my cultural homeland. My major at university was English Lit, and as a kid, J.R.R. Tolkien was my favorite writer. I was just, I'm not a fan of the movies. If you're a fan of the books, like any fan of books, usually we criticize the movies, but I really didn't like the movies. But anyways, a separate point. I could do a whole hour on that. But and I think Peter Jackson is amazing. I just think if Lord of the Rings was shot more like Game of Thrones, meaning 9 seasons, so we're talking like hundreds of hours, I think Peter Jackson could have done Lord of the Rings, the book, justice by having, and in fact, J.R.R. Tolkien and his son Christopher Tolkien had said that you can't make this into a movie. And I think J.R. Tolkien was correct, meaning it's too condensed of a format. It needs a lot of breathing room. And I think the Silmarillion, the book that is, in terms of the Tolkien universe, is the first book because it's the beginning of the realm of the world, of the universe, and of the world and stuff like that. I think it's going to be like a Game of Thrones style, where it's like 9 seasons or something like that, because you would need that much breathing space to tell the story. But anyways, as an English lit major, I dreamed about going to Oxford University. I dreamed about all my literary heroes like Jonathan Swift and J.R.R. Tolkien and T.S. Eliot and all those fellows. Dreamed of moving to the UK. My wife has no interest in leaving this area, but I would have loved to have lived in the UK. And in Canada, all of our money has the Queen on it. We have Queen Elizabeth Theatre. We have Queen Elizabeth Park. And so, as a Canadian, we just kind of, even our architecture is either Edwardian, Gregorian. It's the periods of the British rule that sort of decided on different types of architecture that we have in Canada, because we're a pretty young country. And so I do consider the UK my cultural homeland. Japan is my ethnic homeland. I was born in Japan. And Canada is my adoptive homeland, right? So I really do have an affection and I feel like cultural connection to the UK. So I am really looking forward to going there. Jennifer, it's a Nikon F70, great camera. It has that weird little green view. What do you call it? LCD top panel. Thinking of getting F100 to keep the lenses. F100 is great. It's a great camera. F6, F5 is a bit big. F100 is a great camera as well. Much improved autofocus. Even the F70 had really good metering. And I don't know if the dioptric control on the F100, if they have focusing, replacement so you can shoot without glasses. I don't know. Hey, Will, how's it going, buddy? Donald saying he misses the old Canon F1. It had interchangeable viewfinders. Yeah, that's what I was telling Jennifer. Going F1. Or, Jennifer, if you do get a manual focus Nikon F3, depending on the lenses you have, it's still the Nikon F mount. They will all mount on the F3, although they might not all work in the same modes. If you shoot in manual mode, they all work. So that's just a little side point. Kavon asking about the Ricoh GR10, a good point and shoot. Yeah, it doesn't have the same manual controls as the GR1. There's an R10 as well, I think. GR10 is fine. It uses the exact same lens as the GR1, so it's a great camera. Or I think maybe it's a slightly different lens. I could be wrong. Maybe it's a 28 f3.5, perhaps. Or maybe it is the same lens. Jigivara. I'm used to the Fujicrons and love their size and portability with the XPro 3. Do you think the Fujinon 10-24 would feel too big for a walk-around lens? It is big. I do travel with the 10-24 on the XPro 3. It looks weird. And the balance is okay, but it works. That's all I'm going to say. It doesn't look pretty. The 10-24 on the XPro 3 doesn't look... When I was in Hong Kong in January, and then I went to Okinawa, I had the XPro 3, the 35 f2, and I had the 10-24. Those are the two lenses, 35 f2 and 10-24. That's it. That's all I had. But I had the 10-24 on most of the time. It works. But considering you're used to the Fujicrons, the 10-24 will feel heavy. I've gotten used to it, and I don't consider it heavy compared to like the 16-55 f2.8 or like an 18-1.4 or even the 16 to right here, the 16 to 80 f4. The 10-24 is definitely smaller and lighter than all those lenses I just mentioned, but it's definitely going to feel much bigger and heavier than any of the Fujicrons. So you have to kind of, like I talked about the clothing analogy, you kind of have to try it on and balance it and feel for yourself if you feel that it's too much or not. But for me, it's okay. But I come from, the old film camera, SLR, sports, weddings. I come from big systems, so I'm okay carrying around the 1024. It still feels small and light for me on my XPro 3. Jennifer, I've several digital cameras that are adjustable and fine. It's just the old Nikon. Thanks. Test out how committed to film before I get the F100. Yeah, that's a good plan. But also you got to remember that, film cameras like the F100 are only going up in price. If you bought it at a good price, make sure it's within market value, and you don't like it, you're going to sell it for at least what you paid or more. Just as a side point, if you wait 3 or 4 years, it's going to be more expensive than what it is now, because there's no chance, or very little chance, although Nikon would be one of the few camera brands that can still do it. They won't do it because they're on the verge of bankruptcy, but remaking the F100. So I say, if you can get a good price on one, just buy it, and if it doesn't work out, then just sell it for what you paid for it. You wouldn't lose money. Unless you don't want money sitting in a camera, right? If you'd rather have it in the bank or Dogecoin or Bitcoin or whatever else you want to leave your money in, then go for it. Gorney asking, is there any safe way to change lenses in Fuji? I'm wondering why there's no possibility to shut down the shutter to avoid getting dust on the sensor. That's actually a good point. I think Nikon does that, doesn't it? To close up the shutter. I tell you, for one reason why most camera brands don't do it, the most fragile part of a camera is the shutter. People think it's the sensor. It's not. The sensor is like a sandwich. There's multiple layers to it, and the final layer is the glass layer. You can get dirt on your sensor. It's not a problem. It's just getting that dirt off and using the right tools, dust, dirt, whatever. You can clean a sensor, no problem, because you're not physically touching the actual sensor. You're touching that glass that's protecting the actual sensor. But if you ruin the shutter, you pretty much ruin the camera. Shutter is they're multi-blade. I will show you a picture of the XD, the Minolta XD here. I don't think there's film in here. So you can see sort of the multi-blade, see that? Now this is all metal, I think, so I'll be very lightly touching it. But see how very light and fragile that is? I shouldn't have even done that, but this is an old film camera. It's tough as nails, built like a tank. If you take your lens off and the shutter comes down like this, and then you get dust or dirt onto the shutter, and then it opens and it gets stuck between, or it scratches, or you damage that shutter, you will do more damage to the camera than getting dust or dirt on the sensor. And oh boy, you have to clean it, right? Cleaning a sensor is really simple. I'll do a YouTube video on how to clean. You just gotta buy a kit, even off of Amazon. They're not that expensive, $15, $20 to buy a sensor cleaning kit. You won't ruin your sensor if you're very careful. The only way to ruin the sensor is if the shutter accidentally closes in on your camera while you're cleaning it. And that's why it's important when you clean your shutter on your digital camera that clean your sensor, not the shutter, that the sensor is left open and it's shutter locked, so there's no way the shutter can come down. So I understand why Nikon does it, to keep the sensor clean, but cleaning a sensor is pretty simple, or at least simpler than people think. But damaging a sensor, I keep on saying sensor, a shutter, is very, very difficult to fix on cameras. And so most manufacturers have decided that they will never let you see the shutter closed, right? They'll never let you see it because it's so fragile. They want to make sure it's always protected by being out of the way, right? It's all hidden. So I understand why manufacturers do that. But maybe if there was, another point would be, how about a false shutter, right? Like not an actual shutter that's meant for the exposure, but sort of like a focal plane shutter that, or a blind, a shutter blind maybe, that comes across just to cover the sensor, so that as you're switching it in and out in an environment where it's dusty, humid, blah, 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 to keep it protected. And then once you put the lens on, then that false shutter or blind moves out of the way. I think that would be a good idea. Will, you're in the middle of rainy season in Fukuoka. I hope you're having a good time. I like the rain, but at night. I don't like it raining during the day. That bugs me. Alan, Tak, any chance you get the new Leica 35 Apple Summicron to test? I'll ask Leica. I've been just kind of talking with them a little bit on through Instagram. It's funny how different manufacturers talk on different platforms, but I've been talking to the sort of the top. Her name is Kiran. She's been the top marketing person at Leica for the past 7-8 years or so. I haven't asked her. I have a Q2 monochrome on its way, and I have the SL2 and the CL, and I did ask for the SL2S that someone had mentioned, like, hey Taka, you should compare the SL2S versus the SL, and that's a good point. I'll take some pictures of certain things that I know I can go back and repeat the shot, even though it's not the exact same moment, so I can compare the sensor noise. But so I don't know if I'll have the SL2 and the SL2S together at the same time, but I'll have an SL2S coming and a Q2 monochrome, and when I have the SL2S coming, I will ask for that lens. We'll see. But I know that that they had mentioned that, you know, certain lenses and bodies are hard to get a hold of, like the SL2S is very popular. I in fact asked for the SL2S first, and Leica said, we don't have it right now, it's still out on loan, is there anything else you would like? And I said, Leica Q? And they said, we have the Q2 monochrome. I said, sure, send it out to me. So that, I think, they're shipping out tomorrow, so I'll get it sometime next week. I know I haven't reviewed a lot of gear outside of Fujifilm, just because, you know, I write 2 articles for Fuji Love, and I write a 3rd article actually in the magazine. So I write 3 Fuji Love magazine articles every month, and so I need constant Fuji content. But I do want to start going back into Leica again and doing the odd Ricoh, Canon, Nikon, Panasonic, you know, like once in a while. I'm a one-person brand, and you guys know I don't just review the camera. I actually take photos. I'm a photographer first, so I don't want to do a one-day review and go out and take horrible pictures of, you know, just nothingness, right? I'm not just a gear reviewer. I consider myself a proper photographer, so I need time with cameras. I need 2, 3, 4 weeks with a camera to pull the best out of it, to give you the best potential out of these cameras, and to do so I need time with it. And with that, I gotta pump out videos, I gotta pump out articles, and so that's why I've been kind of neglecting Leica, and I feel pretty bad. And people would think, Tak, aren't you stupid? Wouldn't you rather review Leica over Fujifilm? It's like, well, I like both, but I don't write for a Leica magazine. And if I did, maybe I would prioritize more Leica stuff, and I would maybe even ask Leica and say, hey, wondering if I could write for LFI, or write for, I don't know, write for their website, or do some stuff with them. Then maybe I would be more motivated to allocate the time to do more Leica stuff. But, you know, I love gear, period, right? If I had the time to review even the latest, the Olympus, the OM1 OMD EM1 Mark 6, I don't know what number it's on right now, I would love to, because build quality, those things are built like tanks. Just unfortunately, I just posted a Fuji Love article on sensor cropping, sensor size, and I'm not a fan of the 4:3 aspect ratio. Not the hugest, I don't hate it, it's just visually now I'm kind of moving towards more of a cinematic aspect ratio, and because of that, it's just I feel like I'm wasting so much of the sensor cropping it. But with digital sensors, there's basically only 2 sizes right now, which is a 4/3 aspect ratio, which is a smartphone, which is the micro 4/3 system, and as well as the medium format 4/3. Other than the Leica medium format, they have a weirder, I I think theirs is like a 55 by 40 or something. So I think it's a little bit more rectangular than square. So because of the limit of 3:2 and 4:3 aspect ratio, and for 3:2 aspect ratio, it's the 1-inch sensor is 3:2. The APS-C is 3:2. C standing for classic, meaning it's the classic aspect ratio, because there was APS-H and APS-P during the film era, right? So P meant panoramic. APS-H was like HD or high def, so it was, I think it was 16:9 or something like that, but it was definitely a much larger sort of a look. And then there was APS-C standing for classic, meaning classic aspect ratio of 3:2, and the 35mm or full frame, which is also 3:2. And there's the odd medium format camera in the film days, like the Texas Leica, the GS and GW69, which is also 3:2. But for digital, it's basically 3:2 and 4:3, and they're not wide enough for me. I like at least 16:9 sensor if they can make one. I don't think they'll do it, or even wider, or you got to use anamorphics to get that wider field of view and still use the entire sensor, which is why I like this Sururi anamorphic lens. And I'm going to try to wrap up now because I'm at 1 hour and 15 minutes. This is about where I like to end off, but let me just see if I can. I'm going to just get to the questions here, guys, if there is any questions. Do you have, Caleb, do I have any experience with MS optics? I do have a little bit. I used in Hong Kong on a Leica M3, and I used my buddy Victor from Barton 1972. They do feel, they're very boutique-y. Image quality depends on which one. They're built really cool, but they are copies of older lens optics, like vintage lens optics. I think I tried the weird 28 f2.8 pancake, and I've tried their 35 1.4 or 35 f2. Optically, they're great. I wouldn't hesitate to buy an MS optics, but remember, you're going for a specific rendering, right? If you're trying to find the sharpest lens or that kind of stuff, that's not why people buy MS optics. They buy it because he'll tell you, oh, this is a Helios design, or this is a something design. And people that know these vintage lens designs, like, oh, it has this type of bokeh, it has this type of rendering, it's good for black and white, or it's good for color slide, or it does this, it does that. That's why people kind of like these MS optics, and he makes them in small batches, so they're very cool lenses to get into. So I would say having them as your primary lenses probably aren't great, because most of them are they're clickless designs, like the MS, like the per gear, right? There's no click stop. So if you're shooting without looking, it can be a bit of a pain that it doesn't shift. This is a per gear. This is not a MS optics, but it's similar to this kind of a design, right? So you can see the aperture, the diaphragm blades moving in there like that. They're cool. I would definitely consider buying them, but I just have too much gear. So I want to get that 20 f2 optics. Yeah, it's crazy, right? Because the lens is like this thin, and ergonomically it's weird because you're not going to shoot with it like you're shooting like this and you can quickly find your aperture and shoot. It's kind of like you're always constantly looking and making sure at the right aperture, but it's just like a playful, it's sort of like a toy lens, but not, because optically it can perform, but when you're using it, it almost feels like a toy because it's so small and it feels delicate. It's not necessarily delicate, but it feels delicate and sort of gimmicky. But again, it's not gimmicky. So it's kind of toyish. It's kind of gimmicky. It's kind of a pain to use sometimes. And they're quirky, but they're a lot of fun. If you're looking for a lens that's going to perform functionally, I would probably recommend more something like a Voigtlander, the Cosina Voigtlander lenses, or getting into the TT Artisan, 7 Artisans, those kind of lenses, versus going to something like an MS optics. But those are fun lenses. So anyways, thanks so much for joining, everyone. We'll talk to you maybe next week. I'm not going to promise next week, but I think this timing is good. And let's finish off. We ended up not talking a lot about Leica, but we talked a little bit about it. And I'll finish off with my beloved Leica M7 with my 20th Summicron. So thank you so much for watching, and happy shooting. It's turned off. Here we go. Peace.